Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you to the 28th lecture of the course Management Organizational Policies and Practices. Let's have a quick recap of lecture 27 and then we move to the contents of the 28th lecture. During that lecture we started off with the concept of the conflict that occurs in the organization. We started off with differentiation between the traditional concept of conflict, the human relations concept of conflict, and the interactionist view of conflict, wherein we discussed that the traditional form of conflict, or the traditional theory of conflict, it stated that the conflict occurs between the members in the organization because of the poor communication between the organizational members, and because of the lack of trust between the members, and that all types of conflict is negative and dysfunctional, and it's not good for the organization, and it occurs because of the reasons of lack of trust and lack of communication. And lack of cohesiveness. Then we discussed the human relations view of conflict, which states that when the two people in the organization, or two or more people, when they interact with each other, then there are chances, it is quite natural that the conflict can arise between them, and that it's not necessary that all types of conflicts are dysfunctional, but some of the conflicts can also increase the firm's performance. Then we discussed the interactionist view of conflict, which stated that it basically differentiated between the different categories of conflict, and it explained that there is certain the task conflict, and there is interpersonal conflict, and there can be a process conflict, and it explained that how the task low to moderate levels of task conflict, they can actually be functional, which means that they can actually increase the firm's performance, whereas the interpersonal conflict, which is owing to the personal differences between the individuals, or between the boss and the subordinate, or between co-workers at the same level or at any level, the interpersonal conflict is because of the personal reasons, and that is not functional, that is dysfunctional. And that should be avoided as much as possible. And then the process conflict, which is about how what would be the line of command, and what would be the authority who will be reporting to whom, who will be doing what assignment, how that assignment will be done, and all the details of how the processes about the work processes, about the job design, etc. Any conflict that arises from those details, that is a process conflict. And we discussed that the low levels of process conflict that can also be functional, and that can improve the organizational functioning, and thus can improve the organizational performance. But if it is again moderate to high level of process conflict, then that's again not going to be functional in the firm. Then we discussed the concept of negotiation, that how the two parties, they can negotiate with each other. What are those two parties, right? And then the negotiating parties, and how the negotiation agreement is prepared, and how that agreement is discussed, and the different features of that agreement, and the different features of the negotiating parties. Then we discussed that there are two different kinds of bargaining processes. One is that this in distributive bargaining, and the other one is the integrative bargaining. And we discussed that how, under what conditions this distributive bargaining takes place, and under what conditions the integrative bargaining takes place. And we also discussed the individual differences in the bargaining styles, whether you adopt a distributive bargaining style or you adopt a integrative bargaining style. Then we had a discussion on the different steps in the negotiation process, right? That how this negotiation process, it starts with each party preparing its case or its proposal, and then they come to the negotiation table, and each of the party presents its proposals, its demands, or what it needs, what it requires. So each party puts in place its demands, and they both discuss. Both the parties, they share information, they discuss each other's demands, requirements, objectives, tell them there's the urgency of their needs, of their objectives, the rationale, etc. Right? And then each party, it enters into it must enter into a certain compromises in order to reach an agreement. So if both the parties, we discussed that under the distributive bargaining, each party considers that it's a zero-sum game in which one party will gain at the expense of the other party, and vice versa. Therefore, each party tries to maximize its own objectives or its own returns. So what do the firms do is that basically they are adopting the competitive strategy. We discussed the different strategies when we discussed this conflict process, that how the conflicts develops and how it matures and how it surfaces and how people's intentions develop on the basis of the how they perceive and feel the conflict. They develop they develop their intentions, and then they behave according to their intentions. And we also discussed the different strategies that the different individuals they use to resolve the conflict or to deal with the conflict. Right? Some people, they use the competing strategies, and some in which their style is totally assertive and it's not cooperative at all. So they try to achieve their own goals and they're not concerned about the goals of the other party. And we discussed all the compromising, in which both parties, they are ready to give up a little bit and ready to achieve a compromised solution. And herein, when discussing the different negotiation processes, we discussed that under the distributive bargaining, if the individuals, they believe in the zero-sum game, and therefore they adopt more of this competing strategy in which they are trying to maximize their own gains, right? And we also discussed the conditions under which the distributive bargaining can be successful, such as when the individuals, they set anchors. If the party will set the anchor, the chances are higher that that party will, negotiations will more be in favor of that party. And we also discussed that the party should also try to give a deadline to the other party, and then the decision can be in its favor. So those parties who use these two tips in this distributive bargaining or distributive negotiation process, they are more likely to succeed, and the results are going to more likely be in their favor. Then we discuss the concept of integrative bargaining, in which both the parties, they come together, they collaborate with each other, and they discuss each other's problems, all the possible solutions towards the problems, and they try to achieve those outcomes which are mutually beneficial for both the parties and which can satisfy the interests of both the parties, right? And herein, so none of the parties believes in the zero-sum game, but they try to achieve a solution which is a win-win solution, and they believe in the win-win game, right? So they come up and discuss their problems and try to bring in solutions that can benefit both of them, not one at the expense of the other. And herein I also gave you the example of the orange peel and the orange juice. That was a very good example to illustrate this case. Then we discussed the different individual differences in the negotiations, that how the different individual or personality characteristics, they can be linked with the different types of the bargainings, such as the distributive and the integrative bargaining, or these can be different, such as we discussed that the extroverted individuals, they or the sociable individuals, right, they may not be very good at this distributive bargaining, because they are very sociable and they are really listening to others, and they are not very much competing, right, and that's why they may not be successful when it comes to the distributive bargaining, right? And in the distributive bargaining, the people who are less in these strategies, they are less extroverted, and the people who are less sociable and less agreeable, they are more likely to succeed under the distributive bargaining regime. Right, and then we had a discussion on the different roles and functions of the third-party negotiations, that when the negotiations between the two parties that does not succeed, that how the third party, it can jump in and What are the different options available when it comes to the third party involvement? We discussed that it is it can be the mediation, the conciliator, and the arbitrator, and the consultant, right? And they all, in their different ways, they can help resolve the third party conflict, or they can help, or they can jump in that negotiation process. And then we also lastly had discussion on the cultural differences when it comes to the negotiations. For today's lecture, we are going to discuss the concept of teams, which is really important, which is increasingly, the works are designed around teams. That is, that the concept has therefore gained immense popularity, both in theory, in practice, in the industries, in the organizations, and in literature. So we see that what are the different objectives for today's lecture. We'll be discussing the growing importance or the growing popularity of the teams in the organizations. Then we'll be contrasting groups and teams. We'll be seeing what are the differences between these two. Then we'll compare and contrast 4 different types of teams. Then we'll be identifying the characteristics of effective teams, right? That what makes teams effective, what are the characteristics of the effective teams, are all teams effective or not. Then we'll be discussing that how organizations, they can create team players, right? So decision when to use individuals instead of teams. When you decide that you have to do the work around, design the work around the individuals, or you have to design it around teams. So we'll be saying that what can be the guiding factors in this regard, right? Then we'll also be seeing that how our understanding of teams, it differs in global context, right? In one country or in one nation, how this concept of teams, it can be different than it can be in in another part of the world, and how these differences, it can also lead to more effective or less effective teams, right? Or the more making of teams in some parts of the world, and lesser team building concept in other parts of the world. Okay, so why teams have become so popular? They are great ways to use employee talent. They are more flexible and responsive to changes in the environment. They can quickly assemble, deploy, refocus, and disband, and facilitate employee involvement, increase employee participation in decision making. They democratize an organization and increase motivation, right? And not all teams are effective. That is a no in the end, right? So commonly, if we see that why teams are popular, it means that some of these points make the teams, at least some of these points make the teams popular, because when of course people are working together in a certain number, when they are working together, they have the interdependent tasks, and they're working together, they're sharing each other's knowledge, sharing each other's views, and they are bringing in more and new ideas, right? And so all the employees, they are participating in this teamwork. They have the authority, of certain degree of authority over the decision making, right? And it has an increasing effect on their motivation and on their commitment, on their goal commitment, right? And they feel more accomplished, and also they feel more cohesive, and their social networks also improve. And also there is, when it comes to the teamwork, there is less democratic setup, right? And there is more flexibility. People have the authority to make decisions to certain levels when the tasks are organized around teams, right? So all these concepts make the concept of teams more popular, because ultimately all these effects of organizing the work around teams, it increases the employee morale, employee motivation and commitment, and as a result, the performance of the team and the individuals, that also improves. But it's important to see that not all teams are effective, right? So making teams, forming teams is not always the solution, or it is not always the right thing to do. So why, under what conditions, under what circumstances can we expect that teams performance will improve, and under what conditions we can expect the teams performance won't improve, or the teams is not a good way to design the work? So I will be discussing in the future slides that how that happens. So what are the differences between the groups and teams? It is important to clarify, because people normally are interchangeably somehow using the teamwork and the work groups or the work teams. These concepts are being used interchangeably, although there is quite some difference between these two concepts. So the group is different from team, a work group is different from a work team. And what makes it different? Under a work group, there are a certain number of people that are interacting with each other, that are sharing information with each other, and they are making decisions to help each group member perform within his or her area of responsibility. So the responsibilities are individual, tasks are individual. There is not much interdependence in the tasks of the individuals. Each individual is accountable for his own performance or his own task. He is responsible for finishing his task, and there is no group, nothing as group effort or group performance. Right, so there is no joint effort required to do the tasks, right? So the individuals who are doing the related, the number of individuals, they are basically sitting together, or they are working in one area or one domain, and they have their individual goals, their individual targets, and they are not accountable for each other's performance, or for the team, or for the group performance, right? They're just sharing information, and they might also be helping out each other, because they might be in somehow related areas. For example, if we talk about a university, then we can see that there can be a number of work groups formed in the university, such as the industrial organizational psychology group can be formed, the human resource development group can be formed, right? So and the individuals under those different groups, they might be under the industrial organizational psychology, there might be around 10-15 individuals who might be working on the different areas in the industrial and organizational psychology. So the main domain is the same, and the individuals, but they have their own goals, they have their own research themes, their own research areas, right, under that broad theme. And those people who are doing their own researches with their own agendas, they are working in that same group, and they might be sharing information with each other, but ultimately their work and their tasks and their activities, that they are all separate from each other, right? That is perfectly demarcated. Then under the work teams, that is not the case. Here there is interdependence in the tasks of the individuals who are the members of the teams, right? And as a result of that interdependence, their performance is also tied to the group, to the team performance, right? So there is no rewarding for the individual performance, but for the team performance. There are team objectives, right? There are team guidelines, not the individual objectives and the individual guidelines, as we see in the concept of the group and the work group, where there are individual objectives or individual targets, individual deadlines. Here there are the team deadlines and the team targets, right, which the individuals, they have to interact with each other, they have to sit together, they have to do the brainstorming, they have to do the problem solving, they have to come up with the solutions, and that is all going to be jointly, that is all going to be a joint effort, right? And they are going to be paid collectively for that as well, right? So if we probe in more on and see as per the different concepts, if we try to distinguish between the teams and the groups, if we come to the goals, we see that, and we just discussed that in the teams, the goal is collective performance, right? So it is about the collective performance of all the members within the team. But under groups, it is the sharing of information only. There is no collective performance, right? There is just sharing of information between the members in the group. Under the teams, the synergy is generated, which is positive, right? When a number of people, when they are working on the interdependent tasks, when they are doing the brainstorming, they are trying to come up with solutions, then they might come up with the aggregate of their efforts that would be greater than their individual efforts, right? So because there is a synergy that is generated when a number of people, when they are sitting together and they are brainstorming and bringing in new ideas or a number of other ways to do the things, a number of possible solutions, right? Then as a result, it is expected that the performance will be improved and the positive synergy would be generated. But in groups where there is no such interdependence and the people are not working that way, the synergy, we do not expect the positive synergy to generate, but we expect that neutral synergy will be there. Then the accountability under the teams, the individuals are responsible for their performance, as well as the individual himself, as well as the whole team is responsible for the performance. So the accountability is both individual and mutual. But under the team groups, it is of course individual. There is no group accountability, or there is no mutual accountability. Then the skills under the teams, they are complementary. Right, the skills of the workforce, of the people who are there in the team, right, that they are complementary, because the people, they are working on the interdependent task. Therefore, they must their skills, they must be such that they should complement each other for the performance of the task. But in the groups, the skills, they are random and varied. So one team, one member in a group might have a totally, absolutely different skill, another might have an absolutely different skill. Their areas might be different, their objectives might be different, their skills might be different. So their everything might be different from each other. So it's expected that under groups, the skills of the members, they would be more varied and random, but they would be complementary under the teams because of the nature of the work, because of the work design. It is interdependent. The task is interdependent. Therefore, the skills also need to complement each other to complete that task. So when we have to use the teams and when we don't have to use the teams, or when teams are effective and when they are not. For the managers, it should be clear, as I explained to you earlier, that that building team is not an answer to any problem, right? And it is not that you have formed a team, or you have organized your work around team and it is going to ensure the success of your firm. That's not the case, right? Firms or the managers, they first need to understand that what is the nature of the work, right? And then they should be able to analyze the availability of the resources that they have, the composition of the workforce that they have, right, and the nature of the task that they want to get done. What is the relationship of those tasks with each other? Is there any interdependence between them, or they are individual? On the basis of these few criteria, it is the manager can decide whether it is a good idea to form the teams, or it is a good idea not to form the teams. So one, there should be clear purpose why you need to form a team, right? You should not form the team only for the sake of forming the team. That's going to be really expensive for you, right? So unless and until there is a clear purpose, for example, if, as I explained to you, if the tasks are interdependent, right, or if the environment is really complex, right, and you need multiple people, number of people, diverse people with multiple ideas, multiple solutions, and who integratively work together and they solve the problems, then there is some clarity about the objectives of the team formation. But if that thing is not there, if there is no clear purpose, then you don't need to form team, yeah, right? Let people work individually. Then if the job, it cannot be done unless people work together, right? If there is certain degree of interdependence between the tasks. But if there is no interdependence, the tasks are totally independent, the job is totally independent, then there is no objective of forming the team left. Then that team-based rewards are possible, then you should form the teams. But if you organize the people around teams, but then you are not able to reward them on the basis of the team structure, right, or the rewards are not team-based, then again it's going to be demotivating for that. So for some of the team members, it might be demotivating, and for some others it might not be demotivating. But the group, the team tasks and the team performance, it should be the team evaluations or the team rewards, they should be linked with the team performance, right? And when the individual reward systems exist only, not the group reward system, not the team reward system, such as the green gain sharing, which is the team reward system, right, or the skill based pays, right, or the profit sharing, etc., when or other forms of non-financial rewards, when they are not there, then of course it is not advisable to form teams. If your company or your organization does not have the structures that follow or that accommodate these group team based rewards systems. Then if there are ample resources, of course, when you organize the work around teams, you need to have a good number of resources, right? Every task, of course, it is done with the help of resources, and in the case of a team, you need to have some specific mix of resources that you need to have. And if you don't have access to those resources, such as the network sharing, etc., or the combined sitting place in the office, right, or some other group emails, the group IDs, etc., if they are not there, so a number of other resources which are related to the performance of the task in the teams, when they are not there, of course, then it's not advisable to form teams, because if you don't give them resources, then of course they cannot give you productivity. Then the teams, they have the authority, right? They have certain power there, but on the other hand, when you don't, when your system is such that you cannot give that authority or power to the teams, right, or there is high management control, then you should not be using these teams. When there is a lot of bureaucracy or the management controls and the policies, strict policies and procedures and non-flexibility, etc., then you may not follow the teams. Okay, so we see that there are 4 types of teams. One, we see the problem-solving team, which is a group of people, around 5 to 12, from the same department, who meet for a few hours each week to discuss ways of improving quality, efficiency, and the work environment. So the concept of this problem-solving team is really similar to that of the quality circles. Right, under those quality circles, I think I told you once earlier as well, that these circles, they are basically formed in which the number of people, they sit together and they discuss their problems, they share those problems, prioritize them, bring in the possible solutions, and do the brainstorming and try to bring in the alternative possible solutions to the problems that are arising, that how to fix them, right? So they are only bringing in the suggestions, right? But they don't have the final decision making power. That power that rests only in the manager, right? So under these problem solving teams, what you're doing is that these teams, they basically try to improve the quality and efficiency of the work environment by combining a number of people and bringing in their ideas and bringing in the possible solutions. But herein there is very less degree of autonomy. We can see that the teams or the team members, they don't have the authority to make the decisions. They can just give their recommendations. Under the self-managed teams, however, it is different. What happens under the self-managed teams is that the groups of 5 to 15 people who take on the responsibilities of their former supervisors, they basically come together, and they manage the team and all the activities of the team themselves, right? So these people, they are basically the supervisors themselves. They don't have a supervisor. So one of the benefits of this formation of these self-managed teams is that one layer of management, such as the supervisors, they are eliminated then, right? Because the teams, members themselves are performing the tasks which were being performed by the supervisor, such as the members, the team members in the self-managed team, they themselves are responsible for hiring and firing of the team members. If they want to select a new team member, they'll be doing all the activities that are done previously by the supervisor, right? And then these teams, they are also responsible for the promotions, for the performance evaluations of their members, right? And all the other HR activities that are done by these self-managed teams, right? So they have all the authority, they have complete authority, right, to do the tasks, right. They have the autonomy to do the tasks, right, and they are responsible for all the HR functions of their team, right. Then we have this concept of the cross-functional teams, which is another form of or another type of team, wherein the employees basically they are coming from the different departments. As the name indicates, the employees are coming from different departments, such as from the accounting department, from the HR department, from the finance department, from the operations department, productions department, marketing department, etc. The people, one or two people come in, and then they form a team. So these cross-functional teams are basically from all the different functions in the organization. The teams, they basically come in, the people, individuals come in, and they form a team. So these are normally formed for the completion of the specific projects, etc. The project teams, which we also call, right. So they are the people who are of the same hierarchy. They are coming from the different work areas, and they are coming together to accomplish a certain task. So the other examples are the task forces and committees of such teams. We commonly hear that a task force has been formed to do this task. So they are for particular projects of particular tenure. Okay, then the final type of team, which is the virtual team. Virtual teams, they are basically, they use the computer technology to tie together physically dispersed members in order to achieve a common goal. So with the advent of and with the advancement of the information technology, the virtual teams have come into existence, right. These teams, they basically share all the characteristics or all the qualities of electronic communication, right, and the individuals, irrespective of their physical distances, irrespective of where they physically are, one might be in at the North Pole and the other one might be at the South Pole, and they still might be in one team working working on a mutual working on a mutual project over the electronic mode of communication, right. And so that is one of the very big advantage of these virtual teams, that the physical boundaries, they are blurred, right, or the physical barriers they are blurred, which is saving you tremendous amount of time, which you otherwise the team members, they might be spending a lot of time on the traveling, right. So and also it is saving you a lot of costs, right. So it is it is an efficient way of doing the task or doing the project through the electronic communication. And the people, this way it is also enabled that one of the members who is very skillful, but who is in the other part of the country, right, and if this but you also feel that that person is really specialized in the particular project that you are handling, right, and he might be a great asset for your team, right. And under the previous circumstances, when the concept of the virtual team was not very popular, and the information technology was not that advanced, then this would not be possible to take that individual on board who is in the other part of the world. But now today, with the help of the information technology and with the conception of this virtual teams that is there, you can employ the people of the different skills that you require from different parts of the world, irrespective of the physical boundaries. Okay, but there are a number of disadvantages of the virtual teams are as well, just as there are disadvantages of the electronic modes of communication, of the emails that we discussed earlier. When the team members, they have to discuss with each other, or when they over the telephone or through emails, and most of the time the communication between the team members is through emails, right. And we discussed that this email is not a very rich source or very rich way of communication, right. And because you sometimes the individuals, they cannot write what they want or what they feel or what are their ideas. They're not very good writers. They cannot really write their mind out, right. And secondly, there also can be some certain noise when in this channel of communication, right. And one individual, he might be, or one team member in the other part of the world, he might be decoding the message message that you have sent in your email in a different way, right? So he might get an entirely different message from your communication with that member, right? So these are some of the disadvantages of this mode of communication, because it may not be very effective, and sometimes it may give rise to conflicts. If you write something but your other member, he perceives it differently, and a conflict might arise between the two of the members, and that might turn into a very heated argument, right? So other limitations of these teams is that since the individuals, they are not occupying any workspace, they are not coming to the offices, right? They are sitting back at their homes, and then from there they are doing their work, right? And as a result, in the organization, among the members, other members of the organization, and among the management, among the top management, among the senior managers, these people who are working in teams, they might become out of sight, out of mind, right? So they may not remain as visible in the organization, and also among the significant others. But the other issue with this teams is that the managers, they need to be really vigilant about who are the team members and what is their individual contributions. They need to keep an eye on that as well when it is about the virtual teams. There needs to be very good monitoring system, where there should be very strict monitoring, close monitoring, right? And then there should be good trust among the members. As we told that, we discussed that the noises, there are a number of noises, and the channel is not rich that these virtual teams are using. Therefore, to have a very good level of trust between the team members is really important. If they are low on that trust, then there are chances of conflict, they are likely to be very much high. Then the teams, they should be highly publicized in the organization. As I told you, that they can become out of sight, out of mind. So so their contributions, their efforts, their results, all that should be frequently publicized, and that will also be a way of accountability for the individual team members as well, because they'll be knowing that they are being noted and they are being quoted in the organization very well, right? So this is about teams. Then we discuss the functional the functional team, which is very traditional structure of the teams, or the functional structure, which we can also call, wherein the teams, they are formed and by function wise, right? So that there is demarcation between the functions, right? So this is a simple way, simple authority, simple chain of command, right? And the decisions, they are made quicker and easier, right? So that is this is basically the functional structure. We'll be discussing the functional team in great detail in our next lecture, which is on the organizational structure. Then the problem solving team, as we discussed with you earlier, that the number of people who are trying to answer a few questions, who are trying to give possible and the plausible solutions to the problems, and these people, they come together and they discuss their problems and they give solutions. They should make only suggestions. The supervisor has the final authority, that will decision and what course of action he wants to take. Then the self-managed work teams, they are the individuals, they are all doing all the activities themselves. They are mutually accountable for their results, and they are on their own entirely to develop the processes and to see who will do what kind of things, right? So these are the teams wherein there is no supervisor, and other people are handling themselves in the shape of a team. Then we had a discussion about these cross-functional teams. And we saw that the cross-functional teams, as we can see from this figure as well, that this is the star shape is a team, that you have formed a team, and different arrows coming from the different boxes indicate that those boxes are the different functions in the organization, such as I gave you the example of the R&D function, the HR function, the management operations, sales, auditing, etc. Right? So there can be a number of different functions in different organizations, and from all these different functions, when the people are coming together, and then they are forming a team. Then we discuss the virtual team, wherein there is a technology which is joining the people together. So all the people, they are tied through that technology which is common between them. What makes team effective? There, of course, are certain criteria which in the first place we did that why to make teams when it is feasible to make teams, right? So once you have formulated a team, you are falling under that criteria, that based on a certain number of guidelines you decide that it's better to organize your work around teams. Then the next step is that how the teams they can be effective, right? Or what are the criteria that make certain teams effective. So the first thing is that for a team to be effective, it needs to have clear goals, right? So the clear goals should be set for the team and for the individuals in the team to make it effective. They should know that what the team is up to, right? Then there should be unified commitment between the team members. There should be shared commitment. There should be the signals. They should be shared between the members of the team, and there should be a unified commitment between the team members to achieve towards the goals that have been set in the organization that have been set for the team. Of course, the good communication is really important for the team to be effective between the members. The communication between the members needs to be very important, right? Unless and until there is good communication between the members, there won't be shared goals between the members, there won't be unified commitment between the members, and the objectives of the team that won't be able to flourish unless and until the communication is good between the members. Because you are certainly organizing the individuals around teams because you want to share, bring in new ideas, you want to bring in more plausible and more reasonable and solutions towards certain problems, right? And therefore the sharing of knowledge, etc., and helping each other, and then getting the task done in a better way and more productive way. So if there is not good communication between the members, then it won't be possible to realize the objectives of the team. Then the trust between the team members is really important. If there is lack of trust between the team members, the team is not going to be effective, and that team might collapse at a certain point in time, right? So a good level of trust between the members, that is really important. If there will be good level of trust between the members, only then there will be risk taking in the team, right? And the individuals, they will be coming up with the new ideas and the new solutions and etc., right? But if they lack trust on the other members, then of course all this is not going to be possible to be realized, and teams are not expected to be effective. Effective leadership is really important for the effective teams, and we all know the role of leadership in the organization, the role of leadership in the team building, the role of leadership in motivating the people or the individuals, right? Even the self-managed teams, they need to have leaders, the self-managers, right? Then we have the effective, for the teams to be effective, it needs to have the support, the internal support, which would be coming from the team members and from the team leader and from their all support for each other, and for the external support that is coming from the organization to the team, from the top management, from the senior managers, in the form of the provision of the different resources that are necessary to do the team tasks, etc., right? So there should be external support from the external commitment. There should be commitment from the top management or from the externals in the organization for the working of the team, functioning of the team effectively, and for the team to be effective. Then there are a number of negotiation skills that are really that can also be important for the effective teams, such as the individuals, because they know that they have to deal with a certain tasks, certain problems. Therefore, in order to come up to the plausible solutions to the different problems, they need to have good negotiation skills. And we discussed the importance of negotiation and negotiation skills in our previous lecture. And it's those negotiation skills that should be there, that are really important to be there if the team is to be effective, right? Otherwise you will be coming up with a totally compromised solution. Then the relevant skills are also important, the skills that are related to the task that the individuals in the team that who are expected to perform, right? So if the tasks are not relevant, if the members don't have the necessary skills and knowledge to perform the task which is related to the teamwork, right, then again it's not going to be an effective team. So the relevant tasks, they can be both the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, the task related skills, right, the technical skills, skills. So these are all the different skills that are that should be there in a team to make it effective. So what are the challenges of creating team players? First, the individuals. First challenge is the individuals, right? Like, or we can also call the individual differences. So one thing is that since the phenomenon of the teamwork and the designing work around teams, that is relatively important, and not many people or not many employees in the organizations, they are familiar with how to work in a team, in teams, right? So they are not aware at all. So they might be resistant, the individuals, right? They are in a habit of working individually, right? So now when they have to work in a team and their requirements are different and the norms are different, then it might be a challenge for the individuals to convert into the team players, and it might be a challenge for the managers to convert the individuals into team players, right? Secondly, of course, the culture is really important, right? For example, in the individualistic cultures such as the US, the concept of team is not as strong as it is in the other collectivist nations of the world, such as the Japan. Right, because in the collectivist cultures, we know that the people have more shared values, and they have more group values and the organizational values, and their which always supersede their individual values and their individual goals. Right, they're more loyal to they feel more responsibility towards the social relationships. They give really weightage to the social relationships, and under those cultures, the teamwork is expected to flourish more, and it is expected to be more effective than it is in the individualistic societies, right? So that is another challenge of creating team players, how the culture affects it, and then the communication, of course, as we discussed earlier, that is another challenge for the organization, because the members, the composition of the members, that might be very diverse, and sometimes it might be difficult to gain certain level of trust and certain level of good level of communication between the members, and that might be a challenge for establishing a team, and successful and effective team. That might be a challenge as well. Okay, so what are the different components of effective teams? One is the context, the other one is the composition, the work design, and the process variables. So let's start off with the context. How context creates effective teams? One, we discussed that the resources needs to be adequate, right? So the firm that need the tools to complete the job, right? And of course, as I give you an example earlier, that if you're forming a team, then you, as per the requirements of the team, you need to provide it the resources, such as the members, they might be required to, because the tasks are highly interdependent, the tasks are really complex, right? And the members of the team, they need to sit together in one office, under one in one room or in one office. Therefore they might need to have a space, right? Workspace might be an enhanced workspace might be required, right? There more access to the other shared networks or the other shared computers that might be required, right? And a facility of the telephone between the members, that might be required, right? So there can be a number of related resources that can be required when depending upon the nature of the task or the goals of the team, that what kind of resources it needs, the provision of those resources in adequate quantity, that is an important step towards creating the effective teams. Then of course the effective leadership and structure, as we discussed earlier, that is important in designing the effective teams. So agreeing to the specifics of work and how the team fits together to integrate individual skills, and even self-managed teams I discussed with you earlier, they need team players or the team leaders. They need the team leaders. Then the leadership, especially important in the multi-team systems, right? Where there are more than one teams. Therein it is especially important. Then the climate of trust. As we discussed earlier, that the team members, they need to trust with each other. They need to have a trust between themselves, and also they need to show trust in their leader for the successful operation of the team. Then the performance and reward systems we discussed earlier, which do not reflect the contributions, the combined contributions, the team contributions, they should not be in place, right? And of course the reward, it cannot be on the basis of the individual effort, but it has to be individual as well as mutual, right? So if we discussed earlier that if the organization, it does not have the if the organization does not have the structures which is supportive of the group-based rewards, then it's not possible to create teams, because when you will be tying their rewards to the individual level, then there is going to be a conflict between the signals and the system of the organization, and which is going to be disastrous for the team and the organization as well. Then the composition is really important to formation of the effective teams, right? So the abilities of the members. We discussed that in a number of areas, the members, they need to have the ability to perform in teams in order for the team to be effective, such as that they should have the necessary technical knowledge, they should have the technical expertise, they should have the problem solving capabilities, they should have the decision making capabilities, and they should have good interpersonal skills to form the effective team, right? So the members, it is also important that all the members, they should be good on all of these skills, not that a member is good on one of the skills and he's really bad on the other of the skills. So that again won't be very effective if one member is good on one and not on the others. So herein it's not only the ability of the members that is important, but it's also the ability of the leader that is important. The leadership style the leader uses, his abilities, his own skills, his own abilities, that also influence the functioning and the effectiveness of the team. So if the leader is not very effective, then he may even he's being ineffective and he's being a poor performer. It might just even reduce the performance of the outstanding workers in the team, right? Because of the influence of the leader. And vice versa. If the leader is really efficient and he's really good performer, then he can even pull along the bad members in the team. He can give them direction, he can make them participate, he can give them directions to do the work, and he can get the work done even from the some of the members or who is not very good at something, right? But if the leader is not good, then it is going to affect the performance of the whole of the team, right? Then we discussed that how the personality characteristics, they can affect the formation of teams, right? Or how they can lead to the effective teams, such as the individuals who are more conscientious, who are open to experience, and who are high on agreeableness. They are all related to be positively related to the team performance, right? So and we can very well expect that the conscientious are the people who are really dutiful, openness to experience, who are really flexible, who are open to new ideas. And we know that when the individuals are sitting on team, one of the major ideas behind formation of team is that there will be the idea sharing, there will be problem sharing, the number of alternative ideas will be presented by the members. So the individuals who are open to experience, they are expected to be good team players. The individuals who are not open to experience, they are not expected to be team players. Then the agreeableness is also another trait that is important, that how much you care about the other team members, how much you listen to the other team members, right? So again, that would promote cohesiveness and that would make the team more effective. So allocating roles and diversity is really important to the team members. According to the skills of the teams, according to the knowledge and abilities of the team member, the roles, they should be allocated to the team members, right? And diversity of the team, that has somewhere diversity has been reported to have positive influences, but we know that if the diversity is managed properly, only then it can bring fruitful outcomes. But if the diversity is not managed, then it might create conflicts in the organization, and those conflicts, they may trickle down to the dysfunctional conflicts, and then it is going to result in a chaos, and the team is not going to be effective. Size of the team is really important. Like the optimal size that has been reported is from 5 to 9 team members, and it can go around up to 10, 12. But larger than this is going to be a bigger size of the team and not very effective size of the team, because then the concepts such as the social loafing, they are reported to be appearing, and then the cohesiveness among the team, that might also reduce as a result of a very large team size. And then it is important that you need to see that whether the individual, when you're designing your work, you need to see the individual preferences. Some individuals are really not team players, right? They don't have the potential, they don't have the capability, they don't maybe have that much communication skills that they can work in a team, or they can deal with other team members. They are more comfortable working individually, right? So if that is the case, then we should only get the people who are volunteers in performing in the teams, who are happy and comfortable in performing in the teams, right, and the individuals who are not the team players, they should not be encouraged to be part of the team. Then the work design is important. We discussed earlier that how the freedom and autonomy should be given to the workers so that they can do their tasks independently, they can make their decisions independently. Then there should be variety in the tasks, right? There should be the opportunity for the team members to perform the different tasks that require the different skills, right? Then the task identity, which is the ability to complete a whole and identifiable task or product. So that, for example, a team is given the responsibility to produce one product, and the team also has to deal with the customers, deal with the suppliers, deal with the other stakeholders individually. So that is the task identity. When you're doing everything on your own, you're doing everything yourself, and you're bringing in the final product to the customer. Then the task significance, which is working on a task or a group that has substantial effect on others or on the organization, right? So if some policy or some product of the organization is really critical, right, and the individual or the team who is performing that would have the idea that it is performing a really significant task and it's contributing really to the organizational output and the organizational performance. Then the process, again, we discussed that there should be commitment to the common purpose, right, and there should be specific goals need to be set, and we know that the goals are specific, or the goals are smart when they are specific, when they're measurable, when they're realistic, and then when they are challenging, right? So team efficacy is again important in creating effective teams, just as a self-efficacy in which the individual is sure about his or her performance under different situations. Team efficacy is the ability or the chances of the organization or the teams about itself that it will be able to succeed in different challenging circumstances, or if different new situations arise, right? So higher the team efficacy, the higher the effectiveness of the team. Then all the team members, they need to develop certain mental models, mental map in their minds, of course, in order to get the work done, so that they can have very good and fair understanding of what the whole process is like and what we are going to follow. Of course, we discussed that the task conflict up to a certain level, that is good in a team, but beyond certain level it becomes dysfunctional, or the interpersonal conflict at all levels is dysfunctional. Social loafing should be minimized in the organization, in the team, to make it effective, and we discussed that one of the reasons why social loafing occurs is when the team size, member size, really increases, right, and the individual is ready to take up his responsibility, or the blame game starts. Then how the individuals, they can be turned into the team players. One, through selection. Make team skills one of the interpersonal skills in the hiring process, right? So whether the individual has team skills or not, it should be at the time of the selection, it should be known. And the individuals who are, they should be screened, and not the other ones. Then the training, individualistic people, they can learn, right? So how the individuals, they can become team players, just train them, right, and even the individualistic people with the individualistic cultural orientations, they can learn the teamwork. Then the rewards, which is rework the reward system to encourage cooperative efforts rather than competitive ones, and continue to recognize individual contributions while still emphasizing the importance of teamwork. So as we discussed earlier, the teams aren't always the answer. They take more time, they take more resources than does individual work. So there are three things that you need to see if a team fits in the situation. Is the work complex? Does it need different perspectives? Will it be better with the insights of more than one person? Does the work create a common purpose or set of goals for the group that is larger than the aggregate of the goals of the individuals? Then, and are the members of the group involved in interdependent tasks? So these are the different ideas that we discussed earlier that can be seen in order for the teams to work effectively. Okay, the extent of teamwork. Other countries, they use teams more often than does the US, and we discussed earlier when we discussed our cultural section that how the US or how in the US the culture is individualistic, and therefore the concept of teamwork is not as much as it is in the other collectivist parts of the world. Then self-managed teams, they do not work well in the countries with low tolerances for ambiguity and uncertainty and high power distance, because we know that the self-managed teams are the ones which are in which the people are managing everything by themselves on their own, even the hiring, firing decisions, even the performance evaluations of the co-workers, the other members of the team. They are all those things, they are done by themselves. They design their processes themselves, they do their productions and the other decisions relating the customer suppliers, etc. They are handled all by themselves, right? So which involves a certain degree of ambiguity and uncertainty in the team, and the teams or the countries which are low in ambiguity and uncertainty, and the countries that are high power distance societies, in them the self-managed teams, that may not work very well. Then the cultural differences, the diversity and the team performance. The diversity, we discussed that it caused by the national differences, it interferes with the team efficiency, at least in the short run. Right, and relating to this, in one of my previous lectures, I gave you an example of the Walmart, that how it opened its one of its stores in Germany, and how it could not run successfully because of the cultural diversity. The culture was entirely different in Germany, and the culture that the Walmart was bringing with it in its store, that was different, and as a result, it had to resolve its outlet there. Then but it has been seen that if you initial phase of around 2 to 3 months, if the firms or if the team, if it survives these cultural differences or the cultural diversity, then it is expected that it will not disappear in the future, and it will start showing some performance. The teams, they need to be, even the mature teams, they need to be reinvigorated, otherwise they will become outdated, they will become stale, and they might become redundant, right? For that, of course, prepare them for that. You can give them certain refresher courses, keep giving the mature people, the mature teams as well, the refresher courses, train them, and encourage them, keep continuous encouragement of the team members that they are performing well. That can really help reinvigorate the mature teams. We discussed earlier that the compensation and the recognition, that should be team-based when it is a teamwork, or when it is a team work designed around the teams. And there are 3 forms. One is the gain sharing, the other one is a skill-based, and the other one is a non-financial. We have discussed already all these different types of the rewards in great detail in one of our lectures on the applications to motivation of the motivation cases. And therein we saw that here I'll just add one point, that according to the different natures, depending upon the different type of the team, one of these compensating interventions that can be introduced, such as the skill-based pay that might be used in the case of the self-managed teams, right? And gain sharing, it might be used more in the case of the functional teams, right? Then according to one survey, it has been shown that only 37% of the companies are satisfied with their team compensation plans, while only 10% are extremely happy or extremely positive about their compensation plans. So this is the figure upon the satisfaction of the members on the compensation plans for the team. We discussed that the goals, they need to be really specific, and the teams, they need to set their goals, and they need to set very specific goals, and they also need to set the priorities, right? Team norms, they start building when a team is formed. Then the team norms also start building, and after passage of some time, the team has mature team norms, right? And these norms are the ways or the values or the expected behaviors from the team members, right? And so the team norms, they're basically a guide to the behavior of the team members, right? And it is basically a regulator of the behavior of the members, right? Just as the organization has its culture, therefore similarly the teams, they have their norms, and they have the similar consequences for the behavior of the members as the organizational culture has. Then the team cohesiveness is, as we discussed earlier, is the extent to which the members, they are attracted to the team and motivated to remain in it. And the cohesive teams, they retain their members, they promote cooperation, and they have high levels of performance. How you can promote this team cohesiveness, that is, you make sure that all team members, they are present at the team meetings. Only then the cohesiveness will improve when all of them are there in the meetings. Then they create additional opportunities for teammates to work together, engage in non-work activities as a team, then make employees feel that they are part of special organization. So all these factors, they can help in this promoting this cohesiveness in the team. Then we have this team conflict. When we discuss the C-type conflict, which is the cognitive conflict, and it is basically task related, and it improves the task performance. And then the one, the A-type conflict, which is more interpersonal related, and it is more effective conflict, and this is the emotional and the personal disagreements, and associated with both decrease in the team performance. And both types of conflicts, they can occur simultaneously, of course, right? And normally chances are that if there is a more higher level of the C-type conflict, which is actually functional, the low to moderate level is functional, but if there is high level of C-type conflict, it can give rise to the A-type conflict as well, right? So that can they both can occur that way. Then effective teams, we discussed, they have a number of common characteristics, such as adequate resources, effective leadership, climate of trust, appropriate reward and evaluation systems. They should be composed of members with correct skills and roles. They are smaller, and they do work that provides freedom, autonomy, and the chance to contribute. The tasks are whole and significant, and have members who believe in the team's capabilities. Right, so the managers, they should modify the environment and select team-oriented individuals to increase the chances of developing effective teams. So they are the conclusions and the implications for the managers from today's discussion, wherein we saw that how different individuals, they can have different personality traits, characteristics, and which can make some of the individuals good team players, while others, they can only do work individually better. We need to identify that. We need to see that why the organizations, they make teams, when they need to make teams, how the teams, they can be effective once they are made, right? And how the team, it needs to set its goals and priorities, and this should be well communicated to the team members, and through team norms, the individual's behavior is regulated, right? So we had a detailed discussion of a number of concepts around the teams, and I hope you had a good listening. Thank you very much. See you again. Allah Hafiz.